This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right. So we're at the bye week. We finally made it 4 weeks into the season. And I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't seen a Browns team need the bye week more than this Cleveland Browns team. Now, that's not saying anything overtly negative about the team, and that's not saying anything overtly positive. I think it's a truly neutral statement. But I do think it is a true statement that this team needed the bye week to come like no other team did, whether it be injuries, inconsistencies in the offense, and then some cracks starting to form in the defense. This is a team that needed the bye week, and I think that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to need your bye week the week you have your bye week. It's good timing, most people like to call it. So what we're going to talk about today and over the next few days is what the Browns can do to tighten the screws in some areas like the defense, and in other areas get some nuts and bolts, add some additions, and fix some things that aren't working so well on the offensive side of the ball. But today we're going to start with the defense. And I know what you're saying, like, what's wrong with the defense? The defense has given up less than 30 total points in 4 weeks, and there's not much wrong with the defense. We know that we've been getting spectacular play from Myles Garrett. We've been getting spectacular play from Denzel Ward. We've been getting spectacular play from Martin Emerson all the way up to Grant Delpit. You could go all the way down to Zadarius Smith. You've been getting spectacular individual efforts, and with the guiding hand of Jim Schwartz, you've been able to mold those individual efforts into great overall defensive performances, which this Cleveland Browns team was not able to do the last couple of years. People forget, even in the Joe Woods era, there were moments where this defense looked good, or where this defense had moments where guys in it looked good, but it was hard for them to play together. That's not a big issue anymore. But there are some things that are poking up on the horizon that I think are important that the defense keeps an eye on and focuses on. Now, one of the things that I am concerned about that I don't think has really hurt the Browns, and I think you start to see cracks of it hurting this Browns defense, is they are a little bit over-reliant on man coverage. Now, man coverage is great. Man coverage is sticky, and it's great when you get that pressure. But when you're not playing a bad offensive line, and let's face it, the Bengals have a terrible offensive line right now, even though they tried to upgrade it. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a terrible offensive line, and the Tennessee Titans offensive line looked like a work in progress at this point, right? They played much better versus Cincinnati, but it still looks like a work in progress. The first real offensive line they played was the Baltimore Ravens, and even they didn't have Ronnie Stanley, and you saw a significant dip in the consistency of pressure. I think you still got a good amount of sacks in that game. I think you still got a good amount of pressure, but it wasn't as consistent as it usually is. Now, part of that might have had to do with effort, given that, DTR was pretty helpless in that game, and football players are just like us. They see that shit going on the offensive side of the ball, and they kind of know what the deal's going to be, and how hard it's going to be to win that game, and how impossible it might be. So that naturally is going to affect effort. No matter how well coached you are, no matter how well motivated you are, your quarterback plays like that, you're going to see some bad efforts. Just look at Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh's vaunted Super Bowl caliber defense got shredded up for 30 versus the Texans, and it wasn't great tackling. It wasn't great thing because they saw the lack of anything that they were getting from the quarterback position. So any team, this can happen to any team, well coached or not. So what do I mean by they rely on man coverage? To get back to my original point, what I mean by this is sometimes they leave guys on islands when they don't have to. Sometimes they send extra guys when they don't have to. Sometimes they trust that they're going to get there when they don't, and they leave things wide open in the back end. One of the big things that points this out is that one play where George Pickens scored in the Pittsburgh game. And you can see what they did there was they forced Tioni Takitaki out on a motion, and then they ran a little bit of a jam. It's not a pick play. It's a jam, right? They ran a jam into Takitaki to slow him down to open up a huge lane. The Browns are starting to be a little bit predictable in these man sets. Teams are starting to figure out when the Browns are in man, when they're in zone, and they're starting to figure out some of the keys. They're starting to figure out some of the reads on it, and they're starting to take advantage of that because they're so overly reliant on man. They have to be able to play some solid zone concepts. Now, I know some of you hear zone, you get flashbacks to Joe Woods, and you freak out, but it's not. Zone is good. I promise you. Zone and man, they're both good. They just need to be executed well. So if this Browns defense wants to be a top 5 defense, wants to be the top defense in the NFL like they've been through the last 3 weeks, they can't be a one-trick man coverage pony. They have to be able to throw in some zone concepts. They have to be able to be unpredictable because, look, the reality of defense in the NFL is if we know you're running man, we can run man beaters and beat you. And I think the Baltimore Ravens showed you that. They knew that the Browns were running a lot of man. And what did you see? A lot of head fakes with Lamar Jackson, forcing the defense to follow their man and go across and then just running towards the naked side. It really affected the run game. You saw it start to affect the pass game where they knew, oh, the Browns are going to be in zone. The Browns are going to be in man here, so we could take advantage of this and go over top here. Or run a rail route to the running back and get it over top because nobody's going to be in the curl flat zone because they're not in zone, right? These are the things I'm talking about where it's like, hey, they're a little bit predictable right now because they're in so much man. And look, you have the best personnel in the world. You still have to have a level of unpredictability. They've done some things pre-snap where, they're changing shells up, but that's only going to confuse teams but so long, right? They have film to catch up to that. And I think you're getting to the point where they're catching up on that. So if you're Jim Schwartz, if you're this defensive staff, they need to get comfortable running a little bit more zone. They need to get comfortable switching up the variety of defenses right now because it's nice when you could just run one defense and dominate, but against the better teams in the NFL, they're going to see those tendencies and hurt you. And this week, well, not this week, the next week's game after the bye week where you play the San Francisco 49ers, that's the exact type of team you don't want those kind of tendencies to be obvious with, because if there's a team that can manipulate you in man and manipulate your run fits and really give you a bad day in that area, it's the San Francisco 49ers. They were warned of it. I think the Baltimore Ravens gave that defense a nice warning shot on Sunday. It's a warning that I think they should take very serious. And if they don't take it serious, that's going to be a bit of an issue. Another thing that it makes me nervous about this defense. Now, again, not much makes me nervous about this defense, but this does make me a little bit nervous. If you've ever noticed, or if you watch my all 22 breakdowns, there are a lot of times where I will say, thank goodness Grant Delpit made that tackle because that would have been a big play. Or thank goodness Juan Thornhill made that tackle. Or thank goodness Denzel Ward made that tackle because that would have been a huge play. This has to do with that over-reliance in man, but it also has to do with how aggressive this defense is. And look, I like when you play bad teams or you play teams that can't match up with you defensively, hit that dial and turn it to 90. I have no problem with how they played those first 3 games. But when you're playing a Baltimore Ravens team that if you hit that dial and go to 90, they have guys who could break some tackles and it can be a problem for you. Like imagine if you're trying to tackle Lamar Jackson or something like that and you miss, or imagine Christian McCaffrey on some of those screens and the first level of guys missing. There's nobody really back there. Then you're inviting yourself to big plays. That doesn't need to be the case, right? There's a balance that you could run from being aggressive and kind of slowing it down and being more cautious. I want them to find that balance. Now, again, it might just be because they played 3 offenses so far they felt like weren't going to be able to hold up, and then they didn't really know what the Baltimore Ravens were going to be bringing to the table, so they played them the exact same way that they did. Okay, cool. I have no problem with that. If you've been knocking dudes out and you Mike Tyson, you don't need to change your style for one fight until you get hit in the chest, right? And now they got hit in the chest. They got a little bit of that. Now they know that they need to make a little bit of an adjustment. And when you play against these teams that have these heavy fronts, right? The Baltimore Ravens still have a fullback on the roster. The San Francisco 49ers have a fullback on the roster. These are teams that are more likely to puncture into that second level of your defense. That can become a problem when you have these teams that can crease you and get you out of your run fits with these head fakes. When you're kind of like very aggressive in your man ideology, then these are the things that can hurt you. So for the next week and some of these teams coming up on the schedule, you want to make sure that you're not as predictable. You want to make sure that you have the ability to still play great defense, even if you turn down the aggressiveness knob just a little bit against like a San Francisco 49ers. And I think that you will be in a good place. I think this defense is really, really good. They have the potential to be one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best defense, and maybe even one of the best defenses in the last 10 years. But they still can't be predictable. They still can't have these little flaws here that pop up here and there versus the better competition. When they play bad teams, they're going to look dominant. But when they play some of these better teams, these are where these flaws are going to pop up. So that's what I think the Browns need to do on the bye week, is just make these small adjustments to the defense. I don't really think anybody needs to play that isn't playing right now, or somebody who is playing needs to be benched. I don't think it's a personnel issue. And I don't really think these issues are all that big. Again, they've only given up 30 points for real, like 14 points because of the turnovers this week, but they've really only gave up 30 points on true drives in 4 weeks, my bad. So I think the defense is, for the most part, fine. You just want to make some small adjustments so that you're not just elite against teams that are pretty okay and under. You want to be elite versus elite competition. I see some issues for this defense that are going to cause some problems. Now, again, the tackling stuff, I think that had a lot to do with the fact that they realized what it was at quarterback in that game. Like DTR, like he just had one of those rookie days. It's a problem, but that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think. What do you think are the changes they need to make to this defense to make it even better for the upcoming weeks? Let me know in the comment section below. How do you think this defense can best utilize the bye week?